Hello, speakers. We're missing one speaker. Let me see where Lisa is. All right, Lisa is coming. Hey, audience, how are you? Thank you for joining us today. It's been a while since I hosted an event. I'm excited about this one. We are here today to talk about speeding up your team's close process. But first, we will give folks a few minutes to join us. And while we wait, I will gonna ask the audience to go into the chat and tell us where you're calling from. We'd like to hear from you, audience. And while you audience do that, I'm gonna do a quick icebreaker with my speakers. And I'm gonna ask them, since yesterday was a holiday day off, I'm gonna ask them what is the best free day, like the best day you had recently. Let me start with Brian. Brian, what is the best day you had recently?
Oh man. Well, hey, yesterday was a pretty great day. My I live vicariously through my kids at this point, and so I got to see my daughter plays JV basketball, and they got a win. And then my son plays at De La Salle High School, and they defeated one of the top 5 teams in the country last night,
Oh, wow.
which was a whole lot of fun. So, I think for most parents, when you see your kids really happy and doing things they love, it goes a long way. So yesterday for me, it was a great day.
That sounds fun. And where are you based?
I'm here in Walnut Creek, California.
Walnut Creek, California. Fun.
Yeah, about
Uh,
25 miles east of San Francisco.
Congrats to your kid on the winning yesterday. Let's hear from Rosalind.
Yeah, I was just trying to think. I'm glad you asked Brian first. I was thinking like free day. When was that last free day? Seems like a long time ago. If I think about, I don't know if it's the best day, but the last probably free day I had was right after New Year's. We went down to Disneyland. Also in the Bay Area, but I'm in the South Bay. I'm in San Jose. But we went down to Disneyland, which was really fun. Took the whole family and we did that. But unfortunately, as those of you have been keeping up with the weather, it was raining. So we had a very wet, cold trip, but it was fun just to be out there.
Still fun.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. Thank you for sharing. What about you, Adrian?
I'll go of yesterday. I have a newborn. His name is Levi Oliver Hunter. He's 4 months old. And just to nap and lounge around the house with him and my wife, Kirsten, and my dog, Honey. She recently had pancreatic cancer and went through surgery, and she's good. She's fine. She's happy. She's a golden lab, and so we celebrated her health and family. And I'm also in Walnut Creek next to Brian, the exciting suburbs of the Bay Area, and the rain is over. So it was a relaxing day, and it was awesome.
That sounds fantastic. And last but not least, Lisa, what's the best day you had recently?
Gosh, I would have to go all the way back to Christmas. I was lucky enough to have all my 3 kids there, their significant others, and my 2 grandkids. So it was just a great, great day.
That sounds fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing, audience. Thank you for sharing where you are. We have people in Canada, all over the United States. I am in New York City, and I will be your host for today. So let me get my slides over here. We're here today to talk about speeding up your team's close process with this amazing team of speakers. Today's event is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Pros. For those of you not familiar with MSP, we are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. And our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer the toughest revenue questions out there and to help them see around corners they might not know about. We do that through live sessions like this one you're about to experience. We have a robust online forum, and we host quarterly summits, and we are starting to get back to in-person events, which is very excited. If you're not already part of the MSP team, you will be invited to join right after this event. And as I mentioned, we host quarterly summits, and next week we are having our mega SKO from January 24th to 26th. It's going to be 25 plus events, 5,000 MSP members in attendance, 60 plus high caliber speakers. Brian's going to be speaking, so if you like what he says today, don't miss it. You can hear from leaders at Drift, Sales Loft, Lean Data, Stage 2 Capital, plus so much more. Don't miss out next week. I'm gonna put a link in the chat right now for you audience to go ahead and sign up for it. But that's enough about other events. Let's talk about this event. I have some housekeeping notes in here. This event is being recorded, so all the knowledge dropped by the speakers today, you will be able to access in the Modern Sales website later on today. And also, I was talking with the panelists backstage. They were like, oh my God, the week is just starting. I need some energy. And they said the best thing that to boost their energy levels are questions. So let's send them a lot of questions using the chat on your right-hand side panel or the Q&A function. And finally, I have airSlate today sponsoring this event. So I'm going to pass the mic to Brian to tell us a little bit more about airSlate and how you can get all the functions that they offer you. Hey, Brian.
Perfect. All right, Eduardo, thank you so much for putting this together. And I would just tell people, please don't make your decision to attend Mega Scope based on whether or not you like what I have to say, because there are tons of amazing speakers, much better than me next week, and I think everyone should attend. So, this is a topic near and dear to my heart and the heart of airSlate, which is helping folks close deals. As I'm sipping from my Coffee is for Closers Yeti cup that Pete so kindly provided me, the founder of Modern Sales Pros. But airSlate, what we do is help sales reps and sales organizations and entire companies automate their documents. And so e-signature is part of that. But I think part of what we're going to talk about today is that there's a whole lot that goes into creating documents, sending documents, getting them back. And that is tedious work and something that people can mess up and make mistakes. And so what airSlate allows you to do in a no-code way is to automate all of that so that your sales team can focus on selling. And so we're the best friend for the amazing superstars in RevOps and sales ops, and let them keep doing incredibly high quality work and take care of some of the things on the back end. So this is just a really exciting topic and audience for us. So thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to sponsor it. Eduardo, back over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. We love having you as a sponsor. Audience, I just dropped a link in there for you to go learn more about airSlate. All right, let's focus on this topic today. Thank you, Brian. I have this amazing lineup of panelists today. Adrian is going to be our moderator, so I'm going to pass the mic to you, Adrian. You can introduce yourself as the other speakers to introduce themselves. I'm going to leave the stage, but I'll be taking notes and listening to this conversation, but you can take it from here, and I'll be back later for outro notes. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Thank you, Eduardo, and hello, everyone. As Brian was saying, I definitely encourage everyone to chat questions. I want this to be collaborative. Myself and the three of these distinguished guests, we have a lot to say on this topic, but there's a lot to it. And there's a lot of elements to it. So, I encourage everyone to pose some questions or comments, and we'll make this collaborative as possible. Thank you all for being here. My name is Adrian Hunter. I'm currently a growth advisor for Just2Know. We're in the e-commerce space. We service brands all over the world. I was recently the VP of Sales and partnerships for Just2Know for 5 years until January, and I'm transitioning into a growth role, advisory role, consulting role with them. Prior to that, I had my own venture, also SaaS product in the real estate space, and had a small exit. So my experience comes with mostly smaller companies and the entrepreneurship and bootstrap and early stage companies. And I've had a lot of fun with that ride. And sales, this has been in my blood as I was an AE prior to that. So this is certainly, as Brian said, a topic that's dear to my heart. We all want deals closed faster, not only for the reps and commission, but for the revenue recognition for the organization. So that's my background. I'll be covering a few topics. I'm gonna pass it off over to Lisa. Lisa, if you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, that'd be great, and then we'll go over to Rosalind.
Yeah, sounds good. So Lisa Daly, I'm currently the VP of Revenue and Planning Operations at Flowcast. My career has all been in operations. I've been in operations 25 plus years. Started off as a sales admin and sort of just stuck with it and progressed my career from there. I'm super happy to be joining this panel. As Adrian said, this is a very exciting topic for me personally. I'm very passionate about it, so can't wait to share some knowledge and insight with you guys. And then Rosalind.
Yeah, so thank you. Thanks, Lisa. So similar to Lisa, extremely passionate about operations as well. I'm Rosalind Santa Elena. I'm the founder of the RevOps Collective. I've been a go-to-market ops in the go-to-market ops space for about 22 years. Started out in finance before that, but been in tech for almost 30. So I'm really excited to be here. I recently went out on my own, started the RevOps Collective, which is an organization that is really focused on unleashing the power of revenue operations, both for organizations and for individuals. So we provide, go-to-market strategy and consulting, fractional RevOps, and then RevOps coaching and training as well. So super excited to be here. Similar to Lisa, passion area, and just excited to share some knowledge and some information and learn from others.
Brian?
All right. Hey, super excited to be here with such a distinguished panel. As mentioned, I run sales at airSlate, and in my career, I started my software career at Oracle, which at the time was the second largest software company, and then I've also been the first sales employee at companies like Webmetrics and HelloSign, and so I've seen the importance of having a strong process, and that is like a foundation for growth. And so one of my mantras around sales and revenue operations has been like, hey, let's not screw things up. And so instead of being too ambitious, starting perhaps smaller, but making sure that you have processes that can scale. And I think especially as we look at this environment in 2023, helping speed up your team's process for closing deals is going to be critical. And so looking forward to a great conversation here. So Adrian, back over to you, sir.
Thank you, Brian. All right, so we'll jump into it. So the first topic that I want to jump into is a deal desk and structuring the deal desk to improve the sales velocity or close deals faster. I'm going to start with Rosalind on this one. Rosalind, if you could speak a little bit on for those who come from maybe smaller organizations and that aren't too familiar with the term deal desk, exactly what it is, how you've had experience structure and how it's impacted increasing increasing deals closing faster, I should say, if that makes sense. There was actually a recent study by PwC that spoke a little bit on having a properly structured deal desk can decrease or can increase sales velocity by up to 40%. So it's clearly something that's important organization needs, especially as you get to larger deals and larger organizations. So Rosalind, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, a deals desk, I guess maybe just to kind of step back and say, what is a deals desk, right? And a deals desk can be a little bit different in each organization, obviously, depending on, kind of your size and stage. But it's really that central body or function that really helps enable deals. And what I mean by that is for, that initial sort of that, what's the best way to describe it? It's a body that's really that cross-functional resource, right? It's almost like a center of excellence. It's the team that will partner with finance and with legal and with all of the different teams that need to be involved in closing a deal. And it's that kind of the best friend to sales, if you will, right? To help drive those deals through, from beginning to end through execution. And that can be systems, processes, approvals, right? All of the things that need to happen to help a deal move through the system faster. Think about in a small organization where your sales rep is going and they're calling finance, then they're calling legal, and then they're asking about terms, and then they're asking product. Can I actually sell this? And what's the pricing for this? And so all of that time wasted can be mitigated by having a strong deals desk structure. And it's not just a person that is now going to take that administrative task of going around asking people. It's establishing processes and rigor and establishing approval and delegation and then using systems to automate that.
That makes a lot of sense. Lisa, do you want to piggyback off that and comment some more?
Yeah, no, I think Rosalind summed it up really nicely. I always liken, I'm a huge football fan, go Niners. So I always liken deal desk to being the quarterback of your transaction. They really are that linchpin that ties across all your cross-functional teams, as Rosalind mentioned, to get your transaction over the line and to make sure that you're getting it done in the most efficient way possible, really removing any boundaries or barriers you have working with finance, working with legal, working with your systems teams, etc. So they can really get that deal over for you faster, which to the PwC study makes your deals happen in a much more timely manner and increases your overall velocity.
And certainly 40% is a big impact, as the study showed. It makes a lot of sense. And Brian, maybe you can comment at airSlate. Is it what in terms of your deal desk, and how much did it come down to collaboration of various stakeholders as we talk? I mean, you mentioned it, Lisa, from finance, and Rosalind as well, from finance to anyone else, sales ops, to maybe need to get a hold of somebody for your CRM and what's going on and get the right quotes out and so forth. Brian, is that something that you had experience with?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of a function of just as you scale, that things that have been one-offs where your head of sales, VP of sales has to weigh in, your CFO has to weigh in, all these different things. And instead, you begin to standardize it. And it can be as simple as, a Slack channel might be the first part where you start with that, but to put procedures in place, and it just frees people up, and that you're not having to constantly answer the same questions, and reps are better enabled. They understand, here are the parameters. If it's a type of deal that has this, and this, hey, I can go ahead. I don't really need to do a whole lot more. This is not an exception. And that gives them more autonomy. And at the same time, it allows other folks not to have to worry about that, because you have those standard procedures and processes in place. And then as you get the one-offs, now you've got the right people involved, and you're not having to say, oh, did anyone remember to run this by legal? Instead, you have a process to make sure all the right folks are involved, and that there's a checklist of here's who needs to sign off, here's what's impacted, and here's what we're accepting, or here's what we would offer instead.
It makes a lot of sense. And actually, to carry on that a little bit, I go back to an old sales trainer. I worked for a large company called Bureau Van Dyke, large databases that we compete against Bloomberg and Dun & Bradstreet. So our deal sizes were very large. And to speak on that a little bit, my sales trainer would always tell me, hey, Adrian, you need to understand the people, the processes, and the resources in the very beginning of whatever deal you have. And so, is there a finance department? Is there a legal department? Is there a procurement department? Who's the right decision maker? And understanding, certainly in the discovery phase, of what all these stakeholders are on the prospects, and let alone internally, to ensure that you have control and visibility and a deep understanding of what it will take to get that deal across the line is so important. And all too often, I would see with certainly my reps where they would miss some pretty critical pieces of information. Oh, there's a procurement department. I didn't even know there's a procurement team for this deal. It's like, yeah, and they're very important, because if it doesn't go through that deal ain't closing. And to understand and identify that, and then ensure that with your deal desk that you have in place and the right people, that the underlying procedures that they're following and the workflows that they're following can ensure that there's not much disruption in that deal cycle, and that would ensure that things come in a little bit faster. So I think that's very important. Gina, you had asked a question. What's the third? People, processes, and resources. PPR. So who are the people? What are the processes, and what are the resources that we have to work with? And when you have that, you can work backwards and have some kind of control of what's going on. Okay, thank you. Yeah, did you have a comment? Anyone else had a comment on that?
I just had one comment on the deals desk. Aside from expediting the transactional side and establishing some of those, some of the governance and the rules around it and helping to automate, but also if you look at a deals desk that's really high performing, they're actually an enablement function of deals and for the customer, right? Because not only you're establishing these type of processes, but now you're starting to guide, you're adding kind of that guided selling right into that process around, okay, if you're selling this product, hey, don't forget, what about selling this and this, and trying to really maximize the revenue on the deal as well. Because I've seen deals desk where we are part of that deal negotiation. We'll sit in on sales calls, right, with the customer and understand, what the customer really needs so that we can really help to support the sales team.
That's great. Thank you. And I think to kind of carry on to that now, there was a second topic that I wanted to discuss, and that's incorrect quotes. And I think that just falls in with everything that we're talking about from deal desk and so forth. And sending out an incorrect quote can always be, it causes disruption, certainly slow deals down. It's not going to speed it up. So Brian, I'll start with you if that's all right. Have you had any experiences with your reps signing out incorrect quotes, and what have you done to mitigate that? I think it was specifically to identify incorrect quotes when they go out, and how have you done to mitigate that?
Yeah, I think, every head of sales has had it. And I think probably every AE has had it happen to them as well, that you send out a quote and it was, oh, I was supposed to, discount 5% and I added a zero and I discounted 50%. And it just leads to these really difficult, you have this moment, and then you suddenly have this really difficult conversation around, well, do we honor it with the customer and just swallow that, man, now I've got to, tell finance and explain to our CFO, our CEO, my VP, hey, I just screwed up and I sent out the wrong thing? Or do we have to go and have a conversation with the customer that says, oops, we screwed this up, and what we showed you is not actually the price? And that's never a good conversation. That's never a lot of fun. And so just having these processes that allow that not to be just purely someone just types something in, but instead you have software and you have guidelines that help guard against human error. Because I think for most of us, we're going fast and we type something in, and do we double check it? And so wherever you can avoid human manual intervention, instead that you have automated processes, I think it just adds a lot to it. And I'd love to hear from two of our experts who kind of live in this and set up those processes.
Yeah. So I am a huge fan of CPQ. I've actually rolled out CPQ systems about 5 times in my career, and they do exactly what Brian is outlining, right? It allows you to set the right guardrails in place for your AEs so they can avoid sending out the wrong order forms. If you have the right guardrails, you have the right processes, and you have the right approval cycles and policies built into your CPQ system, it's going to flag when you have a 50% or above order form. It's going to flag when you have terms that require additional approvals in your order form. And on top of that, it aids in your velocity, right? Because if you set the right boundaries, you will never really have to use your deal desk team. You can build out of that automation to build this self-service model for your field. I don't know, Rosalind, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Definitely. I think, having the automation and just those guardrails, as you mentioned, right. And it is going to increase things because your AE doesn't have to even think about it. It's literally guiding you through step by step how to create the quote. And then if it needs approvals, it sends automatic approval requirements. But you think about, so automation there is great. Obviously process before automation, right? Having that really strong process of how things need to work. But if you're a smaller team and you're not ready for CPQ, even if you're doing it manually and there are folks involved, but make sure you have those guardrails in terms of, is it a deals desk or somebody is reviewing that quote as a final step before it goes out, right? Making sure that you have all of the boxes checked in terms of approvals and what's standard versus non-standard, and making sure that, just that final step before it goes out to a customer. Because Brian said the last thing you want is to have to send an incorrect quote to a customer and have to dial back.
And I think if I'm going to piggyback off of that, makes a lot of sense. And I think, there's the concept of quality control, and certainly with the automation you have in place and the guardrails, as you guys have all mentioned, is critical. And as you get into more enterprise and more complex deals, it certainly becomes more critical, because that 50% or that 5% can make a monster difference depending on the deal size. So I think investing in the infrastructure to prevent that is certainly part of the deal desk as well. Is certainly critical. But I'd also add, you take somebody like myself who's coming from a bootstrap type of venture, and we couldn't really afford to implement or really had the size to implement these CPQs or any kind of systems in place. It's just understanding that your reps need to understand, take a deep breath, review what they're going to send out, and ensure that that they're putting together the right information. For those of you on the call probably can appreciate me or listening in, me, I'll write an email, and I always tell it to myself, as an old mentor told me, write the email, don't send it, put in your draft, and come back to it 6 hours later. And you come back to your email draft 6 hours later and like, wow, I'm writing like a fourth grader here. Look at all these spelling mistakes, and I don't need to add this, or maybe even the next day. You'd be amazed how much you adjust to the right information, but you catch mistakes that you normally don't. So that same analogy, that same concept with your deals is taking a deep breath when it comes to, I mean, unless you're in an organization that's sending out 50 quotes a day, and if you are, that's amazing. I haven't heard of that. But let's just say that you're sending 1 or 2 or 3 a week, or in some of the larger ones, far fewer. You have the opportunity to proofread yourself. We learned it in school, and you learn it now. And it sounds so basic, but it's so true. Being careful with what you're writing, being a professional and dotting your I's and crossing your T's in terms of the quote that you're putting together. And really the overall proposal. Is the proposal speaking to the pain point you're solving for them? Did your prospect explain, did you hear and understand what is it that you're solving? What were their personal drivers? And does that proposal encompass that? And does that quote reflect what you talked about? And is the ROI there? You can do all that on right on your screen on an email, let alone your whatever contract software you're using. So I think it's just important to take a deep breath after you have a sip of your coffee and proofread what you're doing before you send out. I think that self-accountability is great. But even that, you can have your sales ops and other key stakeholders who are reviewing before you send out as well. So that goes along with everything else that we talked about. And I think it's super important because you don't want to be in a position between 50 and 5%. That's a bad look for you and everybody involved. Moving on to the next topic, unless we had any. Okay, Lisa, thanks for answering that question. And this is the idea of team collaboration to optimize high velocity selling. So this is obviously very important. There's typically in any kind of deal that you have, you're going to have a lot of team members involved, and certainly it touches on the deal desk as well. But you could have a solution engineer involved in your team. You can bring in somebody from customer success who's speaking to a customer. You have your AEs looping in their head of sales to help them. Whatever, maybe you may need finance, etc. So when it comes to collaboration to optimize high velocity selling, are there any kind of best practices or things that you three have seen that can help on that end? I'll start with Lisa. Do you have any comments on that and any experience on that end?
So high velocity selling as it relates to the collaboration across teams?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, when you do that, and especially in a high velocity business, you really want to bring your team members in as early as possible in your transactions so that you can keep the sales cycle running as smoothly as possible. The last thing you want in a high velocity transaction business is last minute fire drills, because that could really slow down what you're trying to accomplish and getting your deals across the line. So that's kind of what I've seen, right? Getting those team members and building out your opportunity teams as early as possible in your sales cycle is really critical to your sales motion.
And I'll just add a quick comment, Lisa, that hit home, because I have the AE and I have a solution engineer, right? And then the AE will throw a call on the calendar and the solution engineer will just show up for the call. No context. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And the solution engineer is trying to, oh yeah, I'm here to answer product questions. And I coach them, get on a quick call with your solution engineer prior and tell them everything about the deal, everything that you know, and let the solution engineer understand what's a priority when we go into this next follow-up call. Because the more everyone's alignment across your teammates going any kind of deal earlier in the process, you said, can have a monster impact on your deal coming in quicker.
And you want to make sure the customer feels heard. The last thing you want to do is show up and do one of those all performing demos that just touches on every single feature that has brings no value to the client as well. That is only going to slow down your sales cycle or eliminate you from that sales cycle altogether. So really being doing a value added conversation and demo.
And Lisa, you're absolutely. If I may add, I'm sure Brian and Rosalind, you've had experiences too. But on that note, information is power in sales. So prior to a call, sending out an email with the agenda and the information that you need to confirm that you talked about. So I could have a call, an AE with a solution engineer on Thursday, and I'll send an email in advance and say, hey, today's call is our third call, and we're going to go over these 3 things that you talked about. This is what my solution engineer is on. And by the way, there'll be anyone technical on your side joining so we can make sure. And can you confirm that you said this was something that was important to you? The more alignment, the more information you have prior to a call and in collaboration with your own teammate and the prospect, you can make your time on the call so much more effective. So those 20 minutes that you have, because after that, the human brain goes away, with your prospect is highly effective and impactful, as opposed to doing all this discovery, or as Lisa said, maybe doing a demo so they had nothing to do with them. So I think is critical. Brian, any comments on that?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that stands out for me is Gong had a stat that resonated with me so much, and I think I see it here in every place I've ever worked, which is if a deal doesn't close in the projected quarter and it pushes to the next quarter, your chances of closing that are decreased by more than 30%. And so when a deal pushes out, things just inevitably are more likely to go wrong. And so, I think this is where the importance of a sales methodology, and there are lots of different ones, but having a sales methodology. And so we use MEDDIC. And so for those folks who aren't familiar, there's decision criteria and decision process. And so I think a lot of the decision process is what we're talking, we talked at the early part of this, but what we've hit on here is that decision criteria and understanding from a customer standpoint, like how are they making this decision? And one of the things I found is that more and more there are multiple decision makers, even on relatively small deals, that there are lots of people weighing in. And if you have a single point of contact and they're touching everybody in the company and they're probably not getting to everyone that they should get to, pretty much guarantee that you're missing things. And so, Adrian, I think your point around, prepping the sales engineer so that they have context for what they're going in and they can listen and look for things. And, one of the things we do is use executive sponsors, whether it's me or someone else. And what I always, remind reps of is get me involved early. And let me help build a relationship. And it can be a quick, hey, I hop on for the first 10 minutes of the call, but hey, I'm Brian, head of sales here. Here's what we've heard. Super excited to be working with you. Here's how I can help you through the process and things like that. Because now if something goes, and I can help validate some of those things, because if things do start to go sideways, now I've got a relationship. And I think what's really difficult for any exec is that, hey, an AE comes and says, hey, I've got this deal, and all of a sudden they've gone silent. Can you help me? And now we're not sure what's going on. And sure, I'm always happy. I'll place a phone call. I'll send an email. I'll reach out. I have no relationship with this person. And so I think, Adrian, just to your point of building those relationships early on and thinking of it as team selling, and, whether it's, hey, do you want to have our CFO talk with your CFO and share how we've thought about this before, and how other customers have thought about it. But I think being multi-threaded and having one that you're talking to lots of people there, but two that you're having multiple people on your side help sell on your behalf goes a long way.
Thank you, Brian. And we got questions, Q&A coming up here soon. So I'll go to the next topic, start with you, Rosalind. And that's the idea of automating post-close. Let's see here. I gotta say that correctly. I wrote it down. How to automate post-close operations. I think that I hope is right up your alley. Do you have any comments on when it comes to post-close operations, any kind of automation there?
Yeah. I always think about, and especially in SaaS, right, and the recurring revenue model. I mean, that signature from the customer is just, or the decision to purchase is just the beginning, right? It's just the beginning of the relationship, or at least you hope so. And so I always am a little bit surprised a lot by organizations where, they spend so much time on top of funnel, they spend so much time on the sales cycle, they get the customer to decide, and then they don't bill them correctly. They don't invoice them correctly. They don't get them onboarded properly. There's not that great handoff between sales and, implementation and post-sales and services and such. And so that customer experience just goes sideways, right away. And so, a lot of things around automation, but just thinking about your post-close operations process, right? Getting your, whether it's implementation or services, depending on what type of business you have, your customer success team, but getting them involved early before the deal closes, making sure that all of the information about why the customer is buying, what are they trying to achieve? What are those KPIs and the ROI that they're trying to hit? All of that information is communicated prior to, that first onboarding call, prior to the implementation of that. And so there's a lot around just the post-sales experience that I think is really important. But on the flip side of that, I think about the finance side in terms of the invoicing, the billing, how the customer gets billed and aligns with their expectations. And so there's a lot there, but there's so much great technology out there to help with this process, right? And so any organization, I guess I would just say that's not leveraging technology to do this, you should be, because as a buyer, we have high expectations. I know as a consumer, if I get a bill wrong, it's probably the last time I'll do business with you.
And that's it makes a lot of sense. And then just results in churn or highly likelihood of churn, which you don't want.
Or they never get onboarded, right? They never get onboarded and they never go live. So
on our end, we did things simple. Like we had a spreadsheet where you do the buyer's notes, and then the AE would put all the information in there. But that information was also in HubSpot, our CRM. And so the customer success rep on onboarding knew to review that. And then we had the AE join the onboarding call. Now was a change we made to manage expectations, because customers sometimes can say things that may have not been said or misconstrued, or we don't know. The customer is always right? So having the AE, the customer success rep, and the customer on that onboarding call has alleviated expectations disconnect, and it's been successful for us. Lisa, I don't know if you have any more.
I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, Roslyn touched on all the great processes that you can build as it relates to that handoff from pre to post sell, but the automation is very key, in my opinion. You really want to automate your quote to cash process so that you can ensure that the rep or your customer is going to get billed in a timely manner, and your finance team doesn't have a major manual process to enter all their sales order or invoices into the right ERP. And there are a lot of great technologies that will support you. But having a good CRM and building your processes around that is going to be critical to your growth and your scalability. Yeah. Your CRM is going to become your hub for all of those other connections to all your cross-functional teams. I mean, if you're in a SaaS organization, once that customer signs that contract, you want to spin up their instance right away. You want to grant them access to their instance right away so that you can recognize revenue for when you bill that client. And you want these in hours. You don't want this in days and weeks. And that's really the power of what automation is going to give you if you build out the right processes and the systems behind you to support you.
Makes sense. Brian, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would just say that in 2023, I don't think there's any great sales organization that looks at the initial sale and says, great, we're done. Because so much of what's happening when you think about land and expand, and Adrian, when you're talking about churn, and Rosalind, when you mentioned adoption, the key metric for more and more SaaS companies is around net revenue retention. And so much of that goes to that customer experience right after they've signed on. And inevitably, if you don't automate things are going to be missed. They're not going to get a invoice, and so suddenly they're getting a collections notice, or they don't get their customer success kickoff call scheduled. And using tools like I can't even imagine trying to schedule calls without using something like Calendly. Instead, thinking back to the days of, well, how about this time? No, that doesn't work for me. And then instead, doing those things in an automated fashion. And that's, part of what we do at airSlate is help automate those processes and tying things in together to different systems. Because one of the mantras I've had for close to 20 years now is, if it's not in Salesforce, it doesn't exist. And so, what you have on your sticky notes, what you have on a spreadsheet, that's all great, but we need it in, our system of truth, which for us it has been Salesforce, so that everyone understands what's in there and has that as a shared resource.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. I think this, in sales, it's great to bring in business, but as all you three mentioned, if you're not retaining that business, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And that customer experience, certainly in the beginning, I think Rosalind and Lisa touched on it too, like that onboarding call, I think it's just so impactful. Like I've been a consumer as well. I think I'm trying to remember, we embedded like Sales Navigator or something like that. And when that initial impression, that onboarding experience to ensure that you made the right investment and you're going to the right place is critical. So however sales can do to help ensure that is a seamless and good journey for the customer through accurate information in your CRM, through managing expectations, through filling out the information that's needed. And then the org can invest in automation to ensure that that's a seamless process is critical. I'm going to pivot over to another. We have some time to keep going on this. And this idea of urgency, it goes a little bit away now back into the realm of the AE who's closing business. And because I keep thinking of closing deals faster, as we like to talk about. It goes back to the post Brian had made on LinkedIn. He was talking about scenarios where a rep is like, hey, they're having a demo, they're having a call, and they find out from a prospect maybe towards the end of the call that they can't submit a budget and they can't buy until the end of 2023. So that's 11 months from now. So you spent all the valuable time, your valuable time as an AE, sitting on the call, explaining the benefits of your solution, how it can help them, to something that in 11 months, we all know what can happen in 11 months. There could be a war, there could be an economic crisis. Everything can change for 11 months to be ready to submit in the budget and so forth. So I guess what I'm touching on is driving the sense of urgency. And I'll use an example, then pass it on to you. What I've seen and where I do some coaching is in Justino, for example, we have we improve sales conversions with the on-site experience. So our customers are e-commerce brands. Think of Chubbies or anyone selling any clothes or any kind of beauty brand online, et cetera, and the cart experience. So typically a lot of brands will spend millions of dollars to drive traffic to their website, but they don't spend much time investing on the on-site, the visitor journey, all of us who are buying the consumer, to convert that person to a paid customer. So we'll do something like find out that they know their current sales conversion is 1%. And then we'll do some math and do ROI. Okay, great, 1%. You got 1 million people coming to your website a month. If you're converting 1% into a sale and you have $50 shorts, you have $50,000, $500,000 in revenue that you generate a month, right? So then we talk, we have a whole, I say we, the AE, have an experience to explain that we can double your conversion rate. Through our discussion, you clearly understand the ROI of doubling it because you could implement a lot of our features on our solution that could double what you have going. So from 500,000 to 1 million, there's a $500,000 revenue impact that you could have with us, right? Then go, great. Let's talk in July because that's when, for various reasons, they make sense. So now you have a 6-month deal cycle, right? If you let them and explain to them that every month they're missing out on $500,000, that they're not implementing this solution, and that to implement the solutions, really integration is already, it's good, it's set in stone. It's a very simple idea, but it's creating the urgency to let them know that what they're missing out on during those 6 months that your solution could do. They have a pause and they realize, yeah, you want to talk to your CFO and your CEO and understand that you have an opportunity and we can create something that's frictionless. We can onboard you where you can have $500,000 in additional revenue every month if you implement not in 6 months, but today, because that's what you're missing every month. And it's changing the mindset and the urgency on your potential buyer as to what's going on. And what that can do, and I've seen that when they go, okay, great, we should probably talk next week. If it really is a seamless integration, I really want to dive into it because I do want to make 500,000 every month, right? But we got to make sure that I believe that. So I'll start with Rosalind, and I'll speak to you. Do you have any kind of experience, or can you touch on driving urgency in the visitor and the buying journey in the deal? So you're not waiting 6 months, but you can wait 30 days potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on this already, but I just want to kind of dive, maybe just talk a little bit more about it. But I mean, really understanding what are those pain points? What is that? We talk about ROI a lot and, we talk about dollars, but we all as buyers know that.
We just lost you.
We lost Rosalind. We lost your sound for a minute there.
No, we can't. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. I'll pass it on, Brian. If you want to touch on that, Rosalind, we get you back. We'll get back to you. But Brian, with this idea, and she was speaking on it, and I imagine she was going this right. ROI is one thing, but it's the pain that you're solving is what she was going to get onto. And so establishing that pain point and attributing it to an ROI can maybe drive urgency. Brian, any comments?
Yeah, 100%. And I'll say, I probably have 25 sales books that I say it's one of my 5 favorite sales books. But the Challenger sale, I think, is one of just the absolute best ones out there. And I think so much of that goes to the heart of this. And this is really what the sales professionals do, that they are able to teach their customer something that, the customer comes because, hey, they do have, a pain, or they're at least receptive to an outbound outreach because, yeah, hey, there's a problem there. But the most successful sales execs are the ones who are able to dig into that deeper and to get the customer really thinking about their own business on a deeper level, and start to think about those ramifications and those impacts that, Adrian, that you mentioned, and start to understand that, like, hey, this is, the difference. If I'm converting website traffic at 1% and I'm converting it at 1.2%, that 0.2% has a massive, massive impact on the bottom line and on the top line. And when you start to say, hey, what would it mean with that 20% improvement? What would you then be able to do? And if you're not doing that, what does that mean? And what are the negative ramifications of that? And someone who, hey, I had another customer and they were really similar to you, and they actually went from 1% to 0.8%. And that led to 30% layoffs. Here's the other side of this. What do you think is going to happen if we don't implement a solution like this? And when customers are able to think about that in their own terms, that's what helps create that urgency, that now they're seeing, one, there's loss aversion. And what we know from studies is that people are twice as concerned about losing things as they are about gaining things. And when you balance those two, when they feel like, hey, there's a potential for loss, but if I move forward, here's my potential for gain. That's what makes it really powerful. And that's where I find that instead of, chasing after customer, hey, just checking in, want to see what's going on, instead, those are the things that help move deals forward and get them closed. Rosalind, I hope I did some justice to what you were going to say when unfortunately, although I'm sure it was much less eloquent than you would have said, but hopefully we got your audio back. No. Unfortunately, still can't.
But Brian, really to touch on that, in that, I like to refer to as a personal driver. So, it's one thing to build ROI, is one thing to drive urgency, but it's got to go to the pain point, and it's got to go to what your prospective buyer has told you that's important to him or her or they about whatever pain point they're dealing with. And bringing it back to there to drive that urgency in terms of what they could be missing out on can help shift the mindset. And you said earlier, educating your buyer and like, wait, yes, and this makes sense to implement down the road. But if you can implement now, here's potential impact on your business. And this is based on what you told me you're trying to solve. And I think that kind of educational approach and consultative approach can go a long way. Lisa, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, just to kind of touch on what you talked about a little bit earlier, Adrian, is establishing what that close process means to your customer, right? If you can establish a close plan with your client up front, you can continue to drive urgency to that close plan, especially if you've agreed upon it and you have the right pain points you've established. That's something that you can easily tie so you don't get into the situation where there's a delay or they lose sight of the benefits of implementing your solution. I'm a huge fan of close plans. I'm a huge fan of getting that joint commitment up front so that you have something that's sticky to that client as you're going through your sales cycle.
Makes a lot of sense. So yeah, and I think, with that, and it goes back to so many things we've been talking about on this call, but understanding your buyer, getting the key information from them, the more, and it's always been ingrained in my head, and I do it with my team, but information is power, we know that. But the more you know, the more you ask, and the more you have them tell you what you need to know. Because if they tell you, you don't want to tell them. You want to be in a position in a deal where your audience, your potential buyer is explaining to you, they're telling you all the things that are important. The more information you have on hand, the more you can leverage that and build out a clear use case and a value proposition that's compelling and drives urgency. Rosalind, we have you back?
I think so. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Eduardo works some magic in the background.
So yeah, we just kind of carried on. I don't know those other questions, but there was one from Tom George. How effective are mutual success plans? When they work and when do they not work? I'll start with Rosalind. Do you have any experience in mutual success?
I was going to say that it always works. You should
Okay.
always have that. Yeah, there's never a time you shouldn't.
What's a mutual success plan?
Yeah, so you need to be working, not just, we talked a lot about the internal alignment and having everybody on the same page, getting everybody involved, but this is your plan with the client or your customer, right, with the prospect, and make sure that you've agreed, and in writing, right? Everything needs to be documented. If it's not documented, similar to being in the CRM, it doesn't exist, right? So you need to have that plan. And that's where you align on the goals, on what you're trying to achieve together for success, and then also the timeline to close.
Makes a lot of sense. Anyone else want to comment on the mutual success plan? I mean, pretty straightforward to me.
I think we so as not to confuse with Modern Sales Pro, we call ours a MAP, mutual action plan, but same idea. And Adrian, something you said that I love is the fact that, hey, digging into why it's a win for the person as well as the company that you're working with, and understanding what that criteria is that's going to make the person successful, and then tying that back into a map, because that helps understand the sequencing, who do we need to have involved, and how it's going to play out over what time.
Makes sense. And then Dom had a follow-up. Do you use a formal tool or just email? When I assume he's touching on the mutual success plan. Is there a formal tool? I guess it's a software tool you use, or is it just via email?
Go ahead, Lisa. I was just going to say
I don't actually have seen a formal tool. I've actually built a custom ones in Salesforce.com. It's easy to build those out and tie those to your opportunity account. And you can actually feed that information down to any kind of PSA solution you have installed or any other cross-functional teams that need to view it. So it's just a matter of identifying what that mutual success plan looks like for your organization. What are the rules? What's the data you want to collect? And it's pretty simple to build within your CRM tool.
Yeah, that makes sense. This it touches on it because it recently happened to us now. And if just you know we're high velocity transactional e-commerce, lower ACV, so it's a lot quicker, and hence we don't have a deal desk and a lot of elements that a more complex org would be implementing. But it touches on closing deals faster, and what we touched a little bit on earlier. We have something on our end that if the prospect wants to redline your contract with their legal team, they must be doing an annual deal with us. If it's month to month, we don't allow redlining, right? Okay. So what I would find in my AEs is we're talking like, yeah, we have this deal, it's coming in. We're really excited. It's 3 days we have monthly quotas. In 3 days, we're going to hit our team target. I'm hitting my quota. It's done. We got buy-in. They're ready to pay credit card. Then he gets an email 3 days before the end of the month. We need to redline your contract. And so then, I mean, this deal, it takes 2 months before it happens. So what I coach this individual AE is to explain to him that in the early part of your sale, when you've established value, things are going well, people, process, resources. Do you have a legal department? And do you anticipate on redlining any agreements? Because if you do, it's going to be in our contracts. We have annual agreements for that. And they go, yes, actually we do. It's very important. I'm okay, how long does that take? Typically 2 weeks. And they're actually on vacation at the end of the month. Okay, why don't we, as you go through this 2-week trial, why don't we get this into your legal hands today? So we're not dealing with it 4 weeks from now. And so it's very simple in terms of uncovering the power, the information you need that can impact your deal and when it closes and getting ahead of it. And that's just planning and finding information. And from here on out, with these kind of deals, they're getting that information in advance, so we don't have any rude surprises that can, ultimately ruin your quota hitting for that month. So just an example of finding that information in advance and getting ahead of it is so critical. So I thought I'd share that with the audience. Do any of you have any kind of, we have about 7 minutes left here. I thought it would be good if Brian or Rosalind or Lisa, when it comes to success stories of closing deals faster. And we talked about implementation. I just talked about a scenario. Do you have any kind of success stories in terms of things you've implemented, whether just a procedural thing like I just said, which is find out information, or software you put into place, or whatever it may be that you've seen that's had a direct impact on your sales that's resulted in deals closing faster? So I'll start with Lisa. Do you have any kind? And if not, you can pass it on to somebody else.
Yeah, I kind of sound like a broken record on this one, but implementing a CPQ and then implementing an automated quote to cash process has had huge benefits to my sales team, right? They no longer have to manually do quotes or manually update order forms. They can all do that in one centralized system. And then I had a huge productivity gain on my finance team by allowing those sales orders to flow down automatically and push the invoices out without them having to manually key every single order into their ERP. It's just massive productivity gains, which allows you to save on FTEs and allows you to really increase your velocity of deals.
I like that. Rosalind, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, sure. I would just add, I think, coming from an ops background, obviously process structure, all of that is super important, especially technology. But going back to just kind of the sales cycle around really following your sales methodology, right? And make sure that if you do adapt medic or BANT or whatever you decide to do, you need to really have rigorous process around that, right? As a sales leader, working with your team, coaching, having the right data and the right insights, and making sure that you are on top of the deals and pushing them forward in every conversation is really important. I think when we skip steps in the sales cycle is when things fall through the cracks. Right? If you skip any steps or miss any kind of, any of those process steps that you need to go through in your methodology, it's very easy to, think you're 2 steps ahead and go, oh no, I forgot to do that. And I think Brian mentioned earlier about, we got to talk to, procurement or legal, or maybe Adrian, you mentioned that, but then you realize that, when it's too late and then your deal gets pushed out. And so just that rigor and that I guess the rigor is the word I keep using, but it really is, right? Being rigorous about your process and your methodologies and just doing the right things.
And then from that, the amount of information and the consistency around capturing information that you need for all your deals, not ensuring that they're closing faster, but you probably have true visibility and true control in your sales org on how these deals are going, how fast they're closing, having the metrics behind them. And then from there, you make all kinds of decisions. So that's great. Brian, did you have any success stories you wanted to share?
Yeah, so one of the meetings that we have here, a weekly meeting, is called CBS Thursdays. I posted about this recently on LinkedIn as well. It's chips, beer, and salsa. And we have different groups come in. Sometimes we'll have marketing, sometimes we'll have product training. But once a month, we have lost learnings. And so we used to call it win-loss, and then now we call it lost learnings because we stick to the losses because we learn a lot more from those. And so we'll go through and talk about deals that we lost. And Adrian, your example of 3 days beforehand, all of a sudden popped up like, hey, this needs to go through legal, and we weren't prepared for that. And that goes back to, did we understand their decision process? Did we use a mutual action plan, mutual success plan? And I think by having a culture of learning from losses, what it allows you to do is figure out what you need to do in your process, like where you can automate things, where you can build those guardrails, what you can do to learn from it for next time. And that the successful AEs are the ones who take extreme ownership and say, hey, this was on me. I missed this. How can I learn from this? What can I do differently next time? And use some of the tools that, Rosalind and Lisa and you that we've touched on here today to figure out how do I prevent that from happening next time? Because I think at the end of the day, that's what revenue operations, that's what sales operations are there for, sales enablement, to help the team win and be more successful and provide a better customer experience.
Makes a lot of sense. I know we got about a minute and a half here left, but I think all of this has been impactful. I certainly learned a lot and makes a lot of sense. I think, sales is an interesting world. And obviously we all want to close deals faster, but there's so much to it. And there's so many different types of sales: outbound, inbound, transactional, enterprise, and different sizes of the organization, large, complex ones that can afford and invest in certain tools that can allow you to do that, versus small bootstrap people that may have 2 or 3 sales reps and you're just grinding and using a spreadsheet and figuring it out. But ultimately, there's a lot of resources, there's processes out there that you can implement that can make a big difference. So I thank everyone here really for the time. I would encourage anyone to LinkedIn Brian, Lisa, Rosalind, and myself. We're always happy to help, advise. I certainly do some advising and growth consulting. I'm I'm also looking for my next head of sales job. So, but we're all here. We're all thought leaders in the space, and we love this stuff, and we're pretty passionate about. So, thank you all for the time. I'll pass it over to Eduardo.
Adrian,
Awesome.
amazing job of hosting.
Yes,
What was
I
that?
agree.
I said you did an amazing job of hosting. Thank you so much.
I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
I
Believe it or
just
not,
posted.
it's my first time moderating, so I'm glad I passed. Thank you.
I just posted everyone's LinkedIn's on the chat, so audience, go ahead and connect with them. We are going to wrap things up in here, but first I want to say thank you everyone for attending. We love having you here. Audience, you are the best part of MSP. I also want to say thank you to our wonderful sponsor, airSlate. You can see a request a demo button at the top of this page. Go ahead and click so the airSlate team can get in touch with you later today. They're doing amazing things. And also, thank you so much, my speakers. Adrian, thank you for moderating. Brian, thank you for all your knowledge. Rosalind, thank you for all the tactics that you gave us. And Lisa, you are so smart, so well, like you know everything about RevOps. So thank you so much for joining us today. Again, this event was recorded. You, audience, will receive a recording link later today. And while the speakers and I hang out backstage, the MSP team will make sure that this event, the recording is available on our website also. Thank you so much, audience and speakers. We can go backstage. And audience, I'll see you in our next event.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, thank
Bye
you.
bye.